Hello once again, audience. So you're probably wondering, what are you doing here this time? Well, today we're here to discuss the character Tom Buchanan in the novel Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald. Well, you're probably wondering, who is this Tom? Well, from the book, you can see that he has two shining, arrogant eyes, and they had established dominance over his face, and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. You could see a great pack of muscle shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage, a cruel body. To put it in more simple words, Tom is a big man you don't want to get in the way of. He's extremely powerful, extremely rich, and really hard to get along with. In the novel, Tom is very arrogant. He portrays himself above everyone else because he's just that powerful. The imagery Fitzgerald uses to depict Tom shows how aggressive he is in the novel. Now, despite all this aggression, as Nick puts it, there's no confusion, like the confusion of a simple mind. Now, this is a comment on Tom Buchanan's personality. With all this roid-like rage that's going to his head, Tom doesn't really think straight. So you're starting to see a picture now. Tom is this big guy who's raging and is kind of dumb. He puts his race and gender in front of everything. Basically every little thing. He tries to make himself better and above everyone else within the novel. Now before I go on, I want to mention that Tom is married to Daisy. Now in this next quote, it describes Tom and Daisy as careless people. This just clearly states that Tom doesn't really care about anyone else. In this case, Fitzgerald uses point of view to depict Tom as this careless, roid-raging, rich guy. So now let's join Abhishek Golapudi in his take on Tom Buchanan.
His speaking voice, a gruff husky tenor, conveyed an impression of fractiousness. This quote illustrates Tom's arrogance, which is so prevalent that you can even see it in his eyes. By describing his voice as gruff and husky, Fitzgerald portrays Tom as an unrefined and authoritative character. The fractiousness that he conveyed shows how he's so irritable and angered because he's not satisfied with his life. Tom was one of those men who reached such an acute excellence at the age of 21 that everything afterwards savored of anticlimax. This quote signifies the enormous wealth that Tom inherited. The excellence referred to in this quote symbolizes wealth. However, this wealth has corrupted Tom to the point where he's no longer satisfied with his life. Because Tom has already reached the highest point he could just with wealth, Fitzgerald uses the metaphor anticlimax to describe how his life can only go downhill from now on. There was a touch of paternal contempt in it, even toward people he liked. This further shows Tom's arrogance and often condescending attitude toward his peers. Because he's so wealthy, he views other people who aren't as wealthy as him are inferior to him and thus treats them with contempt. Because he's so wealthy, he views other people who aren't as wealthy as him as inferior to him and treats them with contempt.
Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about Tom Buchanan's crude behavior in the book The Great Gatsby and how it affects the Fitzgerald's view on women's equality during the 1920s. There are many quotes that support this notion. For example, in the following quote, making a short death movement, Tom Buchanan breaks Daisy's note with a swift movement. This is on page 41 of the novel. This action shows that Tom Buchanan, although seemingly married with Daisy, has some crude behaviors that might affect his views on women, thus portraying Fitzgerald's view on women, that equality is not present at this time. This quote also shows that Tom Buchanan imposes a type of power upon the people he interacts with. This God complex that Tom Buchanan is most likely portraying is representative of men during the 1920s and the lavish lifestyle, which, although put women on pedestals, they also, in the back of everyone's mind, they thought that women aren't as equal to men.
My God.